Story now. That was White House Press Secretary Jay Carney moments ago when he was pressed by Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry about the Trayvon Martin case. Just one of a series of questions from the White House press corps, all asking that same issue: how the administration plans to handle the fallout from the Trayvon Martin case and the George Zimmerman case. Joining me now is David Webb, host of the David Webb Show on Sirius XM's Patriot Channel and a Tea Party 365 co-founder, and Mark Hannah, a former aide to both John Kerry and Barack Obama's presidential campaigns and a Democratic strategist. Gentlemen, good to have you both with me today.
Good to see you, Martha.
Thanks, Martha.
David, let's get started with you on this. Obviously, what Jay Carney's not saying in this press briefing is, you know what, the jury has spoken, and the president and the administration believe that it's time to move on. That's not what we're hearing here.
The fact, Martha, that they waded into this when President Obama made his comments is what brought it to that level. Had the president not said, if I had a son, his construct son, he would look like Trayvon Martin, they would not have that level. Now, the Department of Justice is looking for 2 bites at the apple from a prosecution point of view. Why didn't they do what was done, say, after Rodney King, where they prosecuted immediately on civil rights violations? Because they had a weak or no case at that point. You can prosecute under Florida law for bias. You could. The FBI went in, they took a look at it, they said there was no evidence to support it. And now they're really going to do the Washington play, which is what I see. They will let some time run out. They'll say we've made our best effort, and then it'll move on and we'll be on to another big story. But this is the political DOJ, not the professional DOJ in play.
Yeah, I don't, Martha, I don't know where.
So, Mark, David is arguing that it's lip service, that they're saying it to pander to certain constituencies, and that's all it is. Is that true?
And I think that's pretty disingenuous when you consider the fact that this investigation was opened by the feds way back last spring, before this case even took place, and then they deferred to the courts locally and stepped aside out of respect. But no, this was brought about by career prosecutors, and if the Department of Justice decides to go forward, if they find some reason to suspect that that race was a factor here, and they decide to go forward, I think that this is a decision that's going to be made, led by, if not with the consultation of, career prosecutors and the expert team that they have there. Now, I think just on the face of it, though, stepping back, when most Americans heard this verdict, there was just this sensation of a grave injustice that had been committed. I mean, I heard this. I was back in a small town where I grew up, and everybody I was talking to, they're not particularly political, but they had this feeling that there was a big miscarriage of justice here. And as Dr. Martin Luther King said, you know, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And that's why you see Americans of all political parties, all colors, all creeds, coming out into the streets and peacefully protesting
let me just jump in
this
there,
verdict.
because
And that's where it should be, not with the president.
On this too, because well, hold on. When I look back at the moment that the OJ case was decided and the reaction in America, the Casey Anthony case and the reaction in America, sometimes people don't feel that justice was done, and that's certainly their right. But in those situations, you know, does the administration, does the president step in and say, you know, we're going to continue to pursue this further?
Right.
And no, they did not, is the answer to that question. So why in this case is it different?
I think because in this case, there's a perception, for better or worse, that if the president comes out and makes a statement about this, that this case is somehow politicized. Whereas before I said it was being prosecuted by career prosecutors. If the president makes a comment here, automatically you're going to have people thinking that there's a political case here. The president, actually, in the statement Jay Carney referred to, there was a statement that, you know, the legal procedures have to run their course. This isn't a time for politics. This is a time to make sure that justice was given, both for the sake of Trayvon Martin and his family and for
justice has been given by a jury of their peers under our system. And the burden you would have to meet for a federal prosecution would have to take into account what has happened in the state prosecution. We now have an acquittal on all charges, not just second-degree murder, but lesser charges in the judge's instructions. What we have here has been a political issue, and we have to look at the actions of the Community Relations Service, a little-known unit of the Department of Justice that went down to Florida last year, 17 months ago, and began to spend taxpayer dollars to facilitate rallies against Zimmerman. This is not the charge of the Department of Justice. The FOIA requests have shown that. We have the emails. We have the amount spent.
How did they stimulate these rallies? How did they provoke these rallies?
You can go to Judicial Watch and read it all. Okay. It lays it out there. Sure. That is a fact from the FOIA requests. Sure. But my point with all of this is justice has been done. A jury of their peers has decided. The burden required for a federal civil rights trial is even higher. And to meet that standard, to show that racial bias, if they had it, they could have done what they did with the Rodney King situation, where they went immediately prosecuted and they received some 30 months apiece. They didn't have a case, and this is a case of two bites at the apple, and let's play it out because this is the politics of it.
You know what? Regardless of the validity of David's points, and I think he makes a couple good points there, one thing that this does point to is the stand your ground laws in the state of Florida, and the fact that you can basically use fear and cowardice as a justification to kill another human being.
Now you're shifting from the actual debate we're having. You're deflecting from the actual debate,
Well, let's talk about the laws that were used in his defense.
We're talking about federal civil rights charges.
A white adult male carrying a gun killed an unarmed black teenager, and no crime was committed.
Trevor Dooley, a black 69-year-old man, shot a 41-year-old white man in Florida. Used stand your ground as his defense. Posted $50,000 bond. Okay. Was at work the following Monday. I think that case was being prosecuted while Trayvon Martin was killed.
Listen, when most Americans look at this case,
where's your outrage on stand your ground then?
If they can imagine George Zimmerman as black and Trayvon Martin as white,
where is your outrage on the Trevor Dooley case?
They would have a very different.
Absent.
Okay, great, David. Good to see you.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you, Martha.
Mark Hannah and David Webb. Obviously, it's a hot issue, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see whether or not the administration moves forward with it, and whether the Justice Department gives it lip service or whether they go further. David, thank you. Mark, good to see you as always.
Thanks,
you,
Martha.
Good to see you, Martha.
All right, let's go back to the U.S.